Hello, welcome to day 4 of your Inner Navigation series, and today we are navigating enlightenment. So if you've not been joining the series yet, you'll guess by the fact it's day 4 there have already been 3 days, which you can either catch here on Instagram or they're on my YouTube channel, and each one taking you through. So the first one, a little bit of context setting. The second one, some understanding of where you are in your own journey. So I'm just distracted there by Instagram telling me stuff. So the second day was where you are in your own journey. The third day, yesterday, was about awakening, what that is, where you might be in that experience. Because as I said in that video, most people who come to my world have already had an awakening of some kind. So actually, you're not coming out of the so-called normal world into awakening. You've already seen something, and you know there's something deeper available. That's generally when people come to me for a deepening of that awakening. And so today we're talking about enlightenment and navigating enlightenment. So I'm going to start a bit today with giving some context, of course, in terms of what enlightenment is, because particularly because often it's used synonymously with awakening. So I want to distinguish between the two for you. They don't have to be distinguished. As I say, many people don't distinguish between them, but it really helped me when I realised this distinction. Hey, thanks for joining. Really helped me to have this distinction and to therefore, essentially categorise what I was doing, in terms of my development, to understand, this stuff was awakening stuff and this stuff was enlightenment stuff. So I'll be talking about that today. I'll also talk about what your experience might be, and therefore what might be the signs that you're ready to go further in your enlightenment and to move deeper into that and to integrate with all of that. What else will I be talking about? I'll be talking about my four types of inquiry, which I use very intuitively in the moment with a client, but I've come to see how all 4 of them very much underpin my work, and there are 3 that are particularly relevant for enlightenment, so I'll talk about those today. And I'm also going to share an inquiry, so we're going to do a live inquiry today, the same as we did yesterday for awakening. So if there's something on your mind, something that's bothering you, something that's frustrating you, something that's upsetting you, any of those things, then they're amazing portals. Our problems are amazing portals to enlighten. And so we'll be using one of those today to do an enlightenment inquiry so that you can experience some of that for yourself. And same as yesterday, I'll also be sharing at the very end of today what's available to you in terms of how we can work together in deepening and integrating your enlightenment. So if you're interested in that, absolutely stay till the end, as you can hear that section. And if you choose to leave at that point, then no problem at all, because you may already have decided I'm not for you right now, or you might just want to come back to it at some point at a future stage. As I say, the recordings are going on YouTube as well as being shared here on Instagram, so you can totally catch up if you want to go back to that later. So let's get into it. So let's begin with positioning enlightenment in the context of that river metaphor that I shared on day 1. I think it was day 1. I'm pretty sure it was day 1. And I think I mentioned it day 2. I certainly mentioned it yesterday in terms of awakening. So yesterday, when we talked about awakening, so if this is the content of the world down here, we've got jobs and people and relationships and cars and all the stuff. Then we move to the middle of the river where the whirlpools are. We keep going right upstream to before the river. That's where we were yesterday. Try and get my hand in the screen. So we were yesterday exploring, I'll go this way in fact. We were before the river. We were before all content. And that's where we're exploring when we're in an awakening conversation. Today, in an enlightenment conversation, we're exploring within the river. So I mentioned a moment ago, we use our problems as portals. So we start in the content of life with what's a problem here in life. We use that as a doorway upstream to the level of the whirlpools, to the level of our psychology, the level of our conditioned mind. And that's the place where we then explore, because that's where the thoughts and feelings sit, which are really what we want to be enlightened from. And so there you have essentially my distinction between awakening and enlightenment. Awakening, the recognition of my essential self, who I am before the knowing of anything else, before the knowing of any content, before the knowing of any experience. That is enlightenment. Sorry, that is awakening. Enlightenment is the clearing up of the psychological confusions, of the conditioned ideas that we've collected through life, and which, quite frankly, are causing us problems and suffering. Because when we haven't awakened, it looks like these thoughts, these ideas, they look necessary to who I am, they look necessary to my survival. And not surprising, like they tell some scary stories about what might happen in our future. So they look terrifying, they look like something that we need to pay attention to. And they come with yucky feelings as well, which also look like something I have to pay attention to and get rid of. So this is what we've been navigating much of life by until now. We've navigated via these whirlpool ideas and stories. But the more we awaken and recognise who we really are, and the more we enlighten from the confusion of believing these stories and believing these feelings are dangerous, the more we feel that feeling of flow. So we come into the world, we come into the experience of being a person, and we flow right down into the content of life in that pure flow, not going via the collected, conditioned psychological stories, not identifying ourselves with any of those. We just flow right into life. And when we flow right downstream into life, that's when it all goes really well. That's when it all turns out just how we hoped it would. And this is all part of the design. Because in doing that, it's basically saying, yeah, that's the way to do it. Oh, who was that? What was that TV show? Anyway, yeah, it's like life's rewarding us, going, yeah, look how good that felt. And then if we come into life and we come and identify with the whirlpools on the way, then life shows up not how we wanted it to. We suffer internally. Those around us suffer. Jobs suffer. All experiences around us have the potential to suffer from that. And I'll share some examples shortly about... oh, hey, thanks for joining. I'll share some examples shortly from a couple of clients over the last couple of days, just to show how normal suffering is. So I'm not talking about I'm on the floor, unable to function. Suffering is a very everyday experience that we've come to not notice. It's become normalised. Like, yeah, this level of fear is normal, and therefore we don't notice. It's become just the sea we're swimming in, the river we're swimming in. So we haven't even noticed that it's not our aligned position, it's not our aligned state. So that's the purpose of enlightenment, to essentially disidentify from these whirlpool stories, from these conditioned ideas that we've collected. Therefore, all that's left when we disidentify from these is to fall back into the knowing of our awake self that we talked about yesterday. So the more we disidentify from these, the more we become unafraid of these thoughts and the feelings they create. Again, the more we are ourselves, and we just stop getting caught up in this stuff. We stop believing it. We stop being afraid of the feelings. And therefore we stop a lot of the domino effect that otherwise would take us down and down and down into a whirlpool, which do ultimately get worse. Another very kind aspect of the system, they get worse in order to get us to wake back up out of that. So there are many, many ways of enlightening. Whereas with awakening, there is one recognition. There is the one simple recognition of who I am before anything else is known. The most essential aspect of who I am. So there's one thing we're interested in, the one thing we're looking at is to understand that essential nature. And although alternative paths. There is a direct path and there's a progressive path. It's still all in pursuit of that one recognition. Hey there. It's all in pursuit of that one recognition. Whereas when we come to enlightenment, when we're exploring these psychological whirlpools, there's a lot more variety there, because although they all stem from one core belief that I'm this limited separate self, and that therefore I'm in a dangerous world that I have to protect and defend myself from. So they all stem from that one belief. But then it branches off into some more varieties of belief. I'm not good enough, I'm not capable enough, I'm not loved enough, I'm not included enough, whichever version of those stories pops up. And then each of these stories has another bunch of stories connected to it. So there is much more to navigate in the Enlightenment exploration. There are more threads of that web, more whirlpools. Each whirlpool is like a little web on its own, in fact. So there is more complexity, and there are loads more approaches to enlightening. So we can do language-based exploration, we can do body-based exploration, we can do energy work. What else have I tried? That's probably the three main categories actually, but let me just give a little more detail. So I've, done language-based exploration with coaches. I've done sound therapy work, so like gong baths, that kind of thing, but personalised with an amazing magical woman. I've done colour work, so if you've heard of colour mirrors, I've done some work with those. I've done chakra-based work. Even yoga actually was the beginning of some of my enlightenment process. That released a whole bunch of stuff. Transcendental meditation, which I did in the early days, also released a whole bunch of stuff. What else have I done? Yeah, they're probably the main ones. Oh, energy work, so I've received energy transmissions. I've worked with channels and people who are magical in terms of disconnecting beliefs and dissolving past lives connections and all that kind of, I guess, normal spiritual stuff we think of. As well as prior to all of this, I was part of normal psychology coaching world. So that world of questioning beliefs and asking if they're true. So there are so many ways in to an enlightenment experience. And all that matters is that you find what works for you. So with each of those things I've engaged with along the way, it's been the perfect thing at the perfect time. So if I was to do it because, I did that yesterday and therefore I should do that again today, because that worked yesterday, therefore surely it will work again today. No, that's when we get lost and confused as a human. So these things work at the perfect time when they come for us at the perfect moment. That's the point at which we are designed to engage with it, because that's the point at which it's going to bring its magic to us. And if we then start trying to use it like we've got a hammer and all we think everything is a nail, then it loses its power, because we're now lost in the mind that thinks, that's worked before, let's do it again, which is all that a mind can do. So pay attention to your own experience, because it will invite you to try different things and move to different things. Some people perhaps stay with one thing longer than I do. I know that I've got a propensity for experimentation and for trying out different things. And I love that, because it means that then I can share that with my clients and bring them a whole variety that either I provide or others provide. But I can kind of go, well, here's a whole bunch of stuff I've tried. What sounds good out of that for your next thing? So, so perhaps some people stay with things longer than me. I don't know. But all I know is that here there's been a lot of different experimentation with a lot of different approaches, each of which has just come at the perfect time. And so therefore it's had the effect, it's had the desired effect. And then as it's coming to the end, it becomes obvious that it's like, that one's done now, okay. And look, here's something else, here's the next thing to do. So it's a very beautiful journey of the right thing coming just as you need it, just at the right time. So have your eyes open for that, have your awareness zoned into the fact that what comes to you is coming for a reason. I sometimes notice that I kind of have to have 3 knocks on the door before it's like, oh, okay, that's the next thing. So just notice if something's coming to you again and again and again, it's trying to say hello, it's trying to get in. So pay it some attention. So in this respect, the enlightenment journey is very different. There are lots of different ways to enlighten, and really, follow your guidance, follow your heart, follow what feels right for you at that time, because that's what's going to make the difference for you. But let's just kind of come to where you might be now in terms of, what's going on in your experience that would suggest that there's more enlightenment work to do. So I mentioned just now that I'm going to say the word even normal psychology-based coaching is a form of enlightenment, because it's getting us to question our belief, it's getting us to question our thoughts. Is it true that you're not capable? Look at all this evidence of what you've achieved in your life. Is that true? That's the kind of stuff I used to do in my psychology-based coaching. The difference back then was that I wanted my clients to get a good thought. I wanted them to switch out their negative, limiting belief thought and adopt a positive affirmation type thought. Oh yes, I am capable, aren't I? Oh yes, that feels much better. And it's true. It does feel lots better because it's more in alignment with who we are. But we don't need to cling on to it like a belief. So it was really helpful. That stage can be really helpful to make some movements and make some progress. What then opened up for me was the exploration of the 3 principles, which essentially teaches us and shows us and points to the fact that no thought is true. No thought is true. And that when we believe any thought, we will ultimately suffer. So even if I was to believe the thought, I'm so capable, I'm so capable, I'm so capable, oh, look at me, how amazing and capable I am, then life comes along and it's showing me the places where I've made a mistake or I've got something wrong. And from this, like, no, I've got to hold on to this belief that I'm capable. I can't let in this evidence that somebody's showing me that I might have made a mistake. And so that, you see how the suffering then comes from that, because now I'm incapable of saying sorry to somebody. I'm incapable of listening to somebody's valuable feedback about how I could improve or change. So whichever way we go, if we cling to any kind of thought or belief, it will ultimately lead to our suffering. It will ultimately lead to problems. Again, perfectly, because that's part of the design, to show us to stop clinging to any thought and any belief. So that's where we move from that psychological world into a world of understanding more about the nature of thought, in that it is always transient, it is always true only in that little moment that it's there for, then it's gone. So we let it go. We don't need to cling, we don't need to hold on, we don't need to hope that I'm capable or wish that I'm capable or mantra myself into being capable. No, you are both incapable and capable. We all get stuff right and we all get stuff wrong. We don't need to cling to any of those thoughts or ideas. And so in the Enlightenment exploration, we're interested in that questioning of thought as to whether it's true. But we're also interested in the feelings, in the physical sensations of the body. And we're absolutely not interested in trying to get a better experience. So whereas with my psychology-based coaching, it was absolutely about, oh yes, you want to have this thought because then you'll have a really good life. It's again just lost. It's trying to use the mind to create a world that we think we want. In this exploration, I am not interested in the outcomes you get in your life. I mean, I love it. I love it when people have nice outcomes. But my interest is in you understanding the nature of that psychology, the nature of that feeling system, and putting it into right relationship with who you really are. Because fundamentally, what we all really want is to become unafraid of this psychological whirlpool experience. That is what we're really afraid of. When we have difficult things happening in the content of life, that's a downstream manifestation of what's going on further upstream. So what we really want to do is to be becoming unafraid of this whirlpool experience, because then not only do I now know the source of who I am, I know who I really am. I now know what all these thoughts and feelings are downstream. And I see that they create my suffering. When I believe them, they create my suffering. And they create problems in the world. So it stops making sense to follow them. It stops making sense to identify and believe in them. And it stops making sense trying to chase a downstream outcome, because that is simply inevitable based on what's happening further upstream. We're either flowing straight into life and it all turns out gorgeous downstream, or we're flowing via whirlpools and then it seems to go wrong. Yes, to get us to look back upstream, to get us to look at the thoughts and feelings being believed at the level of the whirlpools in order to enlighten from them. That's all that we're being invited to do, in order to become unafraid of them. Because then as that happens, we disidentify from them, we stop being afraid of them, therefore we stop engaging with them, therefore we flow downstream into the content of life and get just the kind of life we'd hoped we would have. So, so if you think about your own experience, the way this might be showing up is there could be oscillation in your experience. So as I said, many people who come to me have already had an awakening. So they've already had that lovely experience of bliss and they've recognised that that's much more in alignment with who they know themselves to be. But they're in this oscillation of feeling blissful and then back into the contraction of the whirlpools again, and then feeling blissful as they feel themselves again, and then back into the contraction of the whirlpools again. So often people are in this kind of oscillation phase and they know that this is who they really are and they'd really like to stabilise there. So to do that, of course, we can do awakening exploration and we can explore these whirlpools and do all the stuff I've been talking about so far. Something else people might experience is repeating patterns of downstream experience in life. I said a moment ago about when things knock on the door 3 times. Often it's more than 3 times when a pattern's been playing out in our life downstream. And we're like, oh my goodness, really? This pattern again? Especially when we've already seen the thinking. So often we can have seen the thinking that's creating this downstream experience. We've got the realisation that, yes, this thinking is creating the yucky feelings, is creating this downstream experience in life. But I can't stop it. And so that's another time at which people will come to me, because it's like, yeah, there's this repeating pattern. I get the logic of how this river thing's working. I get the logic that I'm creating this via these whirlpools. I get that, but it's not changing. And I'm done with it. That's a really great time to come and explore with me, because we will work on that understanding of the whirlpools. We'll understand where there are fears and what they are and how they show up in the body, and we'll support you becoming unafraid of that, seeing it's not true, and returning to that feeling of yourself, all of which then supports a different experience next time you flow downstream into life. Then the patterns in the manifested world start changing, because now we've done the deeper work upstream. A third example is when the life looks like a problem. It's kind of connected to that last one, in fact. I've realised I've kind of put 2 together there. Life looks like a problem, and I get it. Like, people will say to me, I get it intellectually, but my body doesn't know that. It's like I get it logically, but my body keeps belying the fact that something else is going on, because I keep reacting. I keep having that same emotional response or feeling-based response. So something in me doesn't get it. Like, even if the head gets it, even if the head can go, oh yeah, well, that downstream content experience is happening because you're believing something at this whirlpool level, and that's creating that. It's like, even if we know that logically, they're going, yeah, but my body doesn't get that. My emotional system doesn't get that. I'm still going through the same reactive process. I'm still doing that repeating pattern thing. What's going on with that? So again, that's a sign that there's more available. There's something else to deepen into. So let me just give a couple of examples of how ordinary suffering can be, because I do use that word. To me, it's a great word and is used in Buddhism, although I'm not a Buddhist. This isn't a Buddhist understanding, although grounded in the same basis. It's not that. But when I heard that word through one of my very early introductions to this exploration, which was a Buddhist book called Buddhism Plain and Simple, they talked about this experience of suffering. And I was like, oh my goodness, that makes so much sense. Yeah, everything that I could see in my clients at that time, it's like, yeah, that's what's going on with them. And essentially suffering, if we were to summarise it briefly, is any time when we're resisting what's happening in our experience. Any time when we're looking at life down there in the content and saying, well, that's wrong, that's not how it should be, that is suffering. And suffering is also any time, therefore, when we believe what our whirlpool mind is telling us. So there's a couple of examples. Yesterday there was a client who is having challenges with her relationship with her sister. And although, like the people I've just been talking about, she could see, she gets it that her suffering is created internally. She gets it that it's a thought-created feeling state. When it feels horrible, when it feels yucky, when it feels wrong, she's super upset about the situation. But when we looked at it lovingly, honestly, and directly, it became obvious that the only reason it looked like a problem was because of ideas she was holding as truths. So a moment ago I said about those whirlpool thoughts, every thought that comes is only there for that one moment. The minute we try and cling onto it and hold onto it, we are guaranteeing our suffering. So there were thoughts about, oh, a sister should be like this, and our relationship should be like this, and it's not, it's like that, and I don't want it to be like that. All of these thoughts about how it should be, and then looking at life and going, well, it's not like that, and therefore I don't want that, resisting the very experience that's happening. And we guarantee our suffering, because this is exactly what's happening. And these thoughts being believed are exactly what's creating that. Because who says a sister should be a certain way? Who says that sisters should always get on together? Who says that they can't stop talking? There is no rule. There are plenty of sisters in the world who have stopped talking. So, if we cling to any of these ideas, we are guaranteed to suffer. Another example, again, which kind of just is so normalised and goes under the radar. So a leader in an organisation who was talking about something which the top leader had decided had gone ahead with really quickly. It caused loads of upset and ripples with those who were impacted, those who were affected by the change. And this leader was sitting there going, oh yeah, I should really have said something. I knew something felt off with it, but I didn't say anything. I should have said something. So there's immediately some suffering. I should have said something, but you didn't. And so again, a resistance to life as it is. Life as it is that you didn't say something. And the mind telling its stories, oh, but you should have done, you didn't do a good enough job, that's terrible. And she said, I've been berating myself and my colleagues. But the key thing, berating myself. I should have done it. A very small and everyday example of suffering that we just count as normal. It doesn't have to be. And then she went on to talk about how when the decision was being made and she heard about it, but there was this, but that's their territory and this is my territory, and should I really be saying this? Like, what will they think of me? Will they think I'm encroaching? Will they think I'm controlling? Will I be stepping on their toes? Essentially, will they fall out with me? Oh, best not say anything. And so she held back, and then the content of life shows up with all the issues as a result of implementing the change the way it was done, without her influence, without her input. So yeah, another example of where believing those whirlpool thoughts, oh, what will she think of me? What impact will it have? You can feel the fear in these. It might be very subtle and very little and seemingly, as I say, normal. Something we might not count as suffering, we just count it as normal everyday worry. But that is suffering. That is the belief of whirlpool thoughts as though they were true, and then living life by them. And hey presto, life provides the evidence that says that wasn't the best way to go. Like, look at the suffering that's now been created. And so again, I mentioned before, this suffering in the world then becomes our portal. That becomes our doorway back upstream. In order to explore this, in order to understand what's going on in that thought feeling system, in order to become unafraid of it and to see its untruth, then we're different the next time we show up. Then we're different the next time we come into the world. And then we get different outputs at the bottom. So that's some of what might be going on in your experience, in the experience of people that you know. And I've said it a few times, but just to be really clear, what we're doing here is becoming unafraid of our thoughts. We're seeing they're untrue. We're seeing that they're temporary. We're seeing that in and of themselves they are not dangerous. They feel scary when we believe them to be true. When we don't believe them, it's just a thought passing through. The more we know who we are, the less we seek to identify ourselves through thinking. We no longer need to identify as a thought, because I know that I'm way before thoughts. And that being me feels a lot nicer than believing I'm this limited thought. And the other aspect is becoming unafraid of our feelings, because those feelings that believing these thoughts creates is the thing we try and avoid through our behaviours, through what we do. So with that leader as an example, the thought, oh, but what will happen if I go and have the conversation with this colleague to say, I don't think they're doing it the right way. Oh, that doesn't feel good. They might fall out with me. They might not talk to me. We've got a team to run here. What will they think of me? That feels horrible. Oh, that feels horrible. So I'm just going to not talk to her. Because then, look, the feeling disappears. And then I feel much better. Oh, yeah, that's better. Yeah, not talking to her, that feels much better. But because that has been done as an attempt to avoid a feeling, it doesn't produce the outcome we'd hoped for. Because life is always teaching us. It's always teaching us and showing us, look at the consequences of having believed that thought and having believed that feeling was telling you there was something genuinely dangerous. So we become unafraid of the feeling, therefore the thought domino pattern doesn't happen, therefore we stop running away from situations that aren't dangerous. And we find ourselves standing strong and speaking truthfully and speaking honestly and directly. So this can happen more. This is like the worst sales pitch ever, but this experience of suffering can happen more after awakening. It's another actually aspect that can bring people into my world, because I mentioned yesterday, after awakening we've had this period of bliss. Oh, it's amazing, my true nature is just blissful. And then conditioning starts to show up more. These whirlpools become more evident. And it's because the contraction of believing I'm separate has kind of kept all this stuff down like worms in a can. Now, it's not necessarily enjoyable keeping them there. It's certainly very tiring keeping them there. It is creating unhelpful and unhealthy outcomes in the world and within us. Our body can feel this. But we've gotten so used to this just being the way that we don't even notice. Then once we've had an awakening, the lid is off. We can't go back. Once an awakening has happened, once there's been that shift into the recognition of who we are, even if we don't really know what's happened, which is part of what I mentioned yesterday, even if we don't really get what's going on, when that's been seen, the lid is off. and it can't be put back on again. And therefore the worms, which are now the equivalent of a whirlpool, the worms are now able to come out more easily. They're able to be seen more easily. Now it's brilliant because in fact what I see is that they come out layer after layer. So if you were to take it as the whirlpools, it's like we start at the outer layers of the whirlpool and we come in and in and in, closer and closer to the bank of the river. So it's a really cool system because it seems super kind in that respect. It's like it doesn't splurge all the worms out at once. It doesn't have us look at all the whirlpools all at once. It's like bit by bit by bit, we are able to explore deeper and deeper and deeper within, becoming more and more unafraid of our experience. So it's brilliant for that. But fundamentally, given the lid is off, given that this conditioning is now free to move and be seen, things can get worse before they get better. Because the only way to live in alignment as ourself, truly, authentically, with integrity, is to work through these layers. Anything else is a form of dismissal or denial. Anything else is an attempt to put the lid back on. And we will get shown that, like we will be called out on that by life at some point. But what is much healthier is if we can actively move through these layers towards health, towards integrity, towards the remembering of the wholeness that we are, so that we become unafraid, deeper and deeper and deeper, unafraid, so that, and deeper and deeper and deeply knowing that, that's a good word, isn't it? Deeper and deeper and deeply knowing that who we are is that which knows all this experience. Who we are is not these conditioned ideas. And so then increasingly as our experience of life improves, then that gives us that kind of, again, that lovely feedback to say, yeah, you're going in the right direction. Keep looking at this stuff, keep being with this stuff, keep loving this stuff. It's a beautiful positive feedback mechanism. So yes, it can be bumpy, yes, it can be challenging. And that, for me, is why I have worked with so many people during this process, and why obviously I would encourage other people to do so, because it is so different when you're sitting with somebody who's been through it before, who understands what's going on, who's grounded in their own knowing of themselves, who's grounded in their own knowing of this whole system. They can be that solid ground for you. They can hold that for you. They can be the space that you've forgotten temporarily that you are. They help you remember that. They help call you back home again. So to me, there is nothing more valuable than having that support from somebody alongside you. And we each find our own way. We each navigate that. As I said before, we find the things that work for us, the people that work for us, the approaches that work for us. Brilliant. We're all unique. We'll all find our own path. And I trust and I know that you will find the path that's perfect for you. But I would really, really encourage you to be open to having people alongside you with the journey. It just makes the world of difference. When we're caught up in the whirlpool, when we're wobbling, when we've forgotten who we really are, when it really, really this really looks dangerous and scary, that's when we want somebody with us who can help us remember, help us come back home, help us remember the nature of these whirlpool thoughts and feelings, and return us into that feeling of flow, back into the feeling of ourself. So what we're doing all the time, we're seeing what we're afraid of, we're testing if it's true, we're understanding its nature, we're seeing that when we follow the whirlpool ideas, it leads to our suffering, it leads to the suffering of others. And so our interest is always in remembering who we are, re-identifying with who we really are, and disidentifying from all the conditioning. It doesn't even need to go. Sometimes I talk about clearing psychology, in fact, clearing up our psychology. In truth, I think all we need to do is disidentify and see it's not dangerous. It doesn't need to go anywhere. In fact, somebody last night in the book group said they'd had an intrusive thought that's reappeared that they thought had gone ages ago. You know what I said about the lid coming off? It's a great example. This intrusive thought's now been able to come back out to play. But she was like, But it's okay. I was fascinated. I was entirely okay with it. It could be there. It wasn't a problem. Because now she's identified enough as who she really is and understands enough about the nature of thought that it's like, yeah, thought, you can be there, and I'll just carry on with my day right here in front of me. That's what we really want. We don't need to get rid of the thinking. It doesn't need to be put in the bin or thrown away. It can be there doing what thinking does. So let me talk a bit, because what time is it now? Yes, I'd best talk a bit about inquiries and move us into the inquiry, and then I will be following that with various ways in which you can engage with enlightenment with me if that's what you choose. So I've realised only really since September last year, when I ran a programme about money, and I discovered I had 3 approaches to inquiry, and then this year there's a 4th one being added in. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of summary of what these are, and then we're going to use one of them today to do an inquiry with. So what I realised was these 4 types of inquiry, one of which more lends itself to awakening, 3 of which more lend themselves to enlightenment. But please know that these processes really are 2 sides of the same coin of a shift. And so one supports the other. The more we awaken, the more easily we enlighten. The more we enlighten, the more easily we awaken. And so these inquiries, although I categorise them as awakening and enlightenment inquiries, you know, they're both supporting the whole thing. It's all supporting the whole process. So the first one, to reconnect us to yesterday, is an awakening inquiry, and I call it inquiring out. So we're inquiring out of all the content into who we really are. Then there are 3 enlightenment ones: inquiring up, inquiring down, and inquiring towards. So inquiring up is when we question our thinking, where we question, is it true? Is it really true? Is it guaranteed 100% of the time true? So if you're familiar with Byron Katie's work, it's that kind of inquiry. Whether following her specific approach or not doesn't matter. What we're interested in is testing, is it really true? Where's our evidence that shows it's not true? And looking at the fact it's not fundamentally who I am, because it comes and goes and I'm still here. So inquiring up is inquiring into thought, inquiring up out of the contraction of what feels so true, up towards that lightness of who we really are. Then inquiring down. Inquiring down is inquiring into our fears, but particularly into the body, into the sensations of the feelings and emotions that happen when we're believing these thoughts. So I said before, a lot of people who come to me say, I get it intellectually, but my body doesn't know it. So inquiring down is so that we make friends with what's happening in the body. We come into close, loving relationship with what's happening in the body. This is part of becoming unafraid of what's happening in our emotional and feeling system. Because until we've done that, we will continue to be afraid and we'll continue to fall into whirlpools. So inquiring down is this coming into close relationship with these feelings and emotions so that we become unafraid, so we live that fuller, freer life. And then inquiring towards is one that's come through this year, which feels like it can run alongside the others, but it seems to also become much more available when we've done a fair bit of inquiring up and inquiring down. It's as though there has to be enough of the disidentification from the whirlpools first in order to then open the space to say, oh, okay, what do I want? Because inquiring towards is that. Inquiring towards is the, what would I love? What would I desire? What do I really want? What would light me up? And so that's what I've termed inquiring towards. And as I say, that can often come on the back of doing inquiring out and inquiring up and down. It's like both of those things create enough space, enough remembering of our wholeness, enough grounding in who we really are, and enough absence of belief in the fears that we can then inquire towards and go, right, now what do I want life to be like? Now what would I love? So have a play with those, see if they're helpful phrases for you to use to understand what you're doing and why you're doing it. And so today we're going to do a live inquiry with an inquiring down inquiry. That's a lot of inquiries in one short sentence. So I mentioned before, if you want to have a play with inquiring up, Byron Katie is amazing for that. And on her website, she's got free downloads of worksheets you can use. So if you want to do some of that, go check her out. We're going to do some inquiring down today. So we're going to inquire into a fear, something that looks like a problem right now in your life. With this, I want you to take responsibility for yourself. So you are entirely safe with this exploration. You are absolutely 100% entirely safe. And you must pay attention to your own physical and emotional experience. You must take care of yourself in this, because obviously I'm not there to do that with you. We're not in a live conversation together. If we're one-to-one, if we're in a group, then I can totally do that and do that in a different way than we're doing here. But here, because we're live, because we're on video, I can't even see your faces. I can see all your lovely names there at the bottom. But you must, I mean, we always must take responsibility for ourselves, but especially right now, take responsibility for yourself. Go as far as you want to with this. I'm going to include that within the inquiry in terms of, you know, you might want to just stop here and that is fine. And if you want to go deeper, then cool, let's go deeper. There's no race, there's no competition, there's no badges, there's no gold stars, there's no I'm a better person because I went deeper. You do what is right for you right now, because that is the most supportive way of working in alignment with what you want right now. And that's really what we want in all of life, to be in alignment with what's wanted right now. So as we move through this, do it to the level that is right for you. You'll know the point at which you can kind of come back into the process with me. And yeah, let's see what you notice. Let's see what this experience is like. And of course, I would love to hear from you afterwards in terms of how this feels for you and what you notice as a result of doing this inquiry together. And I guess you can also know that because we've got a good number of people here watching this live now, there is an impact when we've got a collection of people in this kind of exploration together, bringing this human version of consciousness together in one place. It does have an impact on our ability to do and see more than we perhaps can do when we're on our own. So yeah, hold that in your heart as we move into this. So I'm going to do the same as yesterday, just keep an eye on my notes as we go through this so that I guide you appropriately with it. So begin with something that's bothering you right now. And oh, by the way, if you want some paper, go grab a bit of paper and a pen. You can do it totally just with thinking and contemplating and being with your system. But if you want to start off with some paper, then grab that or use your notes on your phone or something. So begin with something that's bothering you right now. Something that's irritating, frustrating, upsetting, annoying, worrying, concerning. Any of these things that's going on for you. Think of what that thing is. Give it a name, like a statement. So like my client yesterday, I want a good relationship with my sister. It upsets me that I haven't got a good relationship with my sister. Something, give yourself a statement of something that's bothering you. And then with that statement, consider, what are you afraid will happen? So whatever it is that's going on, what are you afraid will happen as a result of that? Take a moment to consider that. Now, if already that feels big or scary or too much, perhaps not too much, but big, if that feels enough, like if that feels like enough, if that's already bringing feelings up in your system, then you might want to pause there. As I say, you pay attention to yourself through this, see the point at which you want to stop. So you've taken your challenge and you've asked, what am I afraid will happen? If you want to go further, ask the next layer down, and then what? So whatever it is you're afraid of, what's the and then what that comes on the back of that? Notice if that's bringing up any feelings or emotions. Choose if you want to stop there, or if you want to go deeper, and then what? What's the fear behind that one? And if you'd like to go another layer deeper again, ask it again, and then what? And for the purpose of today, we'll pause at that point. Of course, you can keep going deeper and deeper and deeper, right down into the heart of the fear that's behind all of that domino effect that flows, that's coming through the whirlpools, that's starting from the bank and these layers of fear. So you've just worked your way back in through the layers of whirlpool, deeper and deeper and deeper, through the and then what's of the fears that are behind whatever looks like a problem on the surface. So come back into connection with the deepest fear that you connected with. Notice the sensations in the body. Notice how you feel in response to that thought. And bring your attention inside. Now you might want to do this with your eyes closed. I know I often prefer to close my eyes to switch off the attention from all of this out here. So you might want to bring your attention with your eyes closed inside. And notice those sensations, whatever it is you're labelling, terrifying, dangerous, scary. Drop beneath that label and notice what you're actually feeling in your body. Where is it? Notice its location. Notice what it's like. What's its nature? Does it seem solid or opaque? Does it seem fixed in one place, or is there movement? It doesn't matter what form it's taking. All we're interested in is looking at it. All we're doing here is being curious about it. Notice if it has a colour or a texture. Notice if it's already changed since you started noticing it. Doesn't matter if it hasn't, but just notice if that's the case. Just stay with it for a moment, just observing it. Neutral observer, just watching this sensation within the body, noticing what it's doing, noticing its movements, its changes, its colours, its textures. Just being with it exactly as it is. No need for it to change. No need for it to go. Just noticing. It'd be lovely to hear what you're experiencing in a moment when we bring you back. But so just remember this feeling right now. Perhaps a moment ago this looked terrifying. And notice right now what this is like. Notice how okay you are with this sensation. Notice that this sensation is not a problem. And to connect us back into yesterday, Notice that you are the one that is aware of this sensation. This moving, changing sensation. And you are the one that knows it. Now gently bring your attention back to the body, part of the body where that sensation is. Bring your attention back to what you're sitting on, to your hands, to your feet. Bring your attention back to the room or the vehicle that you're in, although hopefully you're not driving, having just done that. Bring your attention back to wherever you are, back into this place that we call the normal world. And just notice how you feel. Drop it in the chat if you'd like to just now, or DM me afterwards, or comment on the post afterwards. But what we tend to experience in that inquiry is a recognition of how okay I am with this sensation. This that a moment before looked terrifying was labelled terrifying. And yet when I dropped out of the mind, out of the label, and into connection with the body, into connection with the actual sensation that's going on, I found it was okay. There's often a peacefulness to it, a quietness with it, just a comfort with watching it, observing it. And yet when we jump up into the labels and believe them as true, and we believe the stories of the mind, suddenly this sensation looks like a problem I've got to get rid of. And that's where we start to get lost. That's where we start to try and change the world to make ourselves feel better. Change ourselves to make ourselves feel better. When all that's wanted is to see that we're not afraid of this sensation that began the whole experience. Then the thinking loosens, we disidentify from it, different fresh thoughts can appear from upstream, and we take much more loving, holistic, integrated, holistic action. And then the outcomes in the world are just what we'd hoped they'd be. So that's the kind of experience that's available to enlighten ourselves from the fear of our feelings. To see that we are entirely okay with our experience, to become unafraid of our experience. So that we can move through life with greater ease, absent of resistance to our inner sensations, therefore an absence of resistance to our thinking, and therefore an absence of resistance to the world, because the world is only ever perceived through what's happening here. And then we are smart. Then we take the best action possible for that moment, with that moment exactly as it is. So sit gently with what you've just done there. Pay attention to yourself as you move through the rest of the day. You might find that you want to take it more slowly, you might want to have a rest later, you might not notice anything and be perfectly fine. Again, given we must always and only can take responsibility for ourselves, do that. Continue to take responsibility for yourself and what you need in the moment, based on what's going on for you. But the underlying direction of all of this exploration is more compassion, more love, more understanding, more inclusion, less fear. Because that's in alignment with who we are. Those feelings are in alignment with who we are. Those experiences are in alignment with who we are. And fear is not. Fear is not our essential nature. So I hope that's been really useful to you. And thank you, Ivana. Appreciate the feedback. get in touch, absolutely get in touch with anything that's come up from today's video. I mean, I am going to go on and talk about what's available in terms of how we can work together. But if you feel complete with what you've received so far, if you've enjoyed hearing about this distinction of awakening and enlightenment, what enlightenment is from my perspective, how I work with that, what we're really all looking for in terms of our thoughts and feelings and the world, and the kind of inquiry that's available. If that feels complete for you right now and you want to go, then absolutely go with love and enjoy the rest of your day. If you'd like to stay and hear about the ways you can engage with me in terms of enlightening more for yourself, integrating and deepening your own enlightenment experience, then I'd be delighted for you to stay and hear of what's available. So, similar to yesterday, I'm going to start with the stuff that's available for free, and then we'll move up through the levels, if you like, to the most invested, both from a financial but also from a heart and commitment perspective. So at the very beginning, as I mentioned yesterday, we've got a newsletter. So actually the difference with today, let me just be clear. So yesterday I kept talking about, right, with Thoughtful Raven we've got this, and with Wild Fig Solutions we've got this. So today I'm only talking as Wild Fig Solutions, because our primary interest at the moment with Thoughtful Raven is awakening. We have got a second book which will be coming called The Complete Book of Enlightenment. Goes well, don't you think, with The Complete Book of Awakening? So that will be coming in Thoughtful Raven at some point, possibly next year. We would love that to be published, but we'll see how we go. So that will be coming, but for the moment I'm just talking today with Wild Fig Solutions hat on, because that's the place where I'm spending my time in the enlightenment conversation with people. So first up, newsletter. So go to my website. The bottom of the homepage is a space where you can subscribe to that and hear about, yes, what I'm up to, what courses are available, what promotions are available, but also newsletters, blog posts, videos, transmissions. I'll talk more about those in a second. But that's where you'll be kept up to date with what's going on in the Wild Fig world, and receive insights and useful resources that are available for you. Second then is, in fact, let me talk about transmissions a bit, because there are free transmissions. I forgot to mention the transmissions in the free bit yesterday, but there are free transmissions available on YouTube. So if you go to my YouTube channel, again, all of this will be in the description once I've ended the call and got that in. But at the moment I'm doing 100 days of transmissions as a bit of a challenge that my friend Nikki and I set for each other. It was meant to be day 55 yesterday. I can't believe I missed yesterday. Oh, there was so much going on, so it didn't happen. So today is day 55, which feels kind of beautiful. It's an eclipse today as well, so I think that's quite nice timing. So free transmissions are available there, and they are primarily enlightenment transmissions. So I mentioned yesterday, transmissions can be with an emphasis on awakening or with an emphasis on enlightenment. The ones on YouTube have an emphasis on enlightenment, and you can go and you can just engage with whichever ones resonate for you. So they work on replay the same as they do live, and they've all got a different title, so you can see which one feels like the right one for you to join in with. So you can go and have a play there and explore in there. Next up, the community. So the Wild Fig community begins at £12 a month at the moment. Who knows if that might change. But you can join from £12 a month, and we do explore the full realm of awakening and enlightenment in there. But I tend to feel like the emphasis is more on enlightenment in that space. We're talking more generally about our experience of life, and a lot of that is around the enlightenment conversation we've talked about today. We do also go upstream and inquire out into who we are and into awakening, but it's it's just the full range of all the possibilities of how we can enlighten and how we can awaken. Somebody commented, in fact you'll hear Nat's video tomorrow, he commented on how he loves that about me, that I bring different things from different people. It's not just, right, here's Helen and here's Helen's stuff. I bring in, I mentioned Byron Katie earlier, I bring in resources from different places, because who am I to know what's right for you? Who am I to say, oh, just listen to my stuff? I want you to have the awareness of all the amazing variety of options available to you. So I bring all of that. So go check out the community. There are 4 levels of membership, and each one obviously offering more and more value as you go through. And in fact, the top level of that, so level 4 membership, gets you private message-based coaching and guidance with me. So if you want some private guidance, but you perhaps can't afford or don't have the time for the top level of offer, which I'll be sharing today in terms of one-to-one, level 4 membership is an amazing option, because it gives you private time with me, but we do it over something like WhatsApp or Telegram. So we get the option of texting, we get the option of voice memos, we fit it into our days when each of us is available and wanting to ask or respond, and it means you get to ask at the time something's there and then, something's alive and present. And so it makes the exploration very immediate in the moment, very responsive, rather than waiting for a set session. Both have their pros and cons, of course, but there is a brilliance to that kind of, right, this is what's coming up right now, this is what what I'm seeing in the world, this is what looks like a problem, so that I can then guide you and work with you and explore with you through messages, as we've done today, but it's just it's a back and forth on messages instead. So it's a really cool way to get private support on an amazing price. So that's the community option. Then let me talk about transmissions next, actually. Then, so transmissions, I've mentioned there are some free ones there on the website. Of course, it's also available as a paid for option, and you can have them just as transmissions on their own. So you might feel like, do you know what, I've done a lot of language-based exploring. I don't need any more of that. Like I get it, I've seen the beliefs, I know what they are. I would just really like the patterns to be resolved now. So I mentioned before, we can come in with our intellect gets it, and our intellect says, oh yeah, I totally get it. Like, this is a thought created reality. I can see that I'm resisting this experience, but it keeps happening. And this is when the body hasn't received the full message yet. The rest of the system hasn't received the full message yet. So through transmissions, it's like a deeper version of what we've just done there with that inquiry. Transmissions provide deeper support than that. They are like water, so I love that it correlates with the river metaphor, because the energy comes into your system and it gets to the places that we just can't get to through language. It gets into all those nooks and crannies and brings that remembrance of the good feeling of ourself to the system, and clears out the conditioning, the whirlpools that are no longer supportive to us, that we no longer need to identify with. It supports that process of returning to who we are and no longer needing to get caught up in the stories at the whirlpool level. So, as I say, you can come for private transmissions where you just receive. So we do start with some conversations, so we're oriented to the intention for the transmissions for that day. But then we move into transmission for 15 to 20 minutes, and you receive the transmission, and we close the call, and you sit and bask in the energy, and then you come back. So I tend to say you need at least 2 weeks between sessions. Sometimes people leave it a bit longer depending on their integration they need, and then we meet again and we go again. So there are really I really loved moving into transmissions when I got to that point of I am so done with talking about this stuff. I'm really pleased, can something get to before the mind? Can something please get pre-conceptual? And as I say, be like water, get into those places that no conversation was ever going to reach. So they're a really, really amazing option. Now they can also be built into what I'm going to talk about next. So the top level of where you're working with me is to have private Zoom calls. We meet for an hour at a time. We explore whatever's happening in your life. So the same as we've done today, we start with the content of life. What's going on in life? What's a challenge? What do you want to understand more about? We move that upstream into understanding the whirlpools, the thinking, the feelings. We make friends with all of that. We see the untruth of the thinking. We get into close relationship with the feelings in the body, and we therefore enlighten. Sometimes connecting it back into the awakening conversation to remember who we are, that knows all of this experience. But obviously it's therefore unique to you. People continually say I'm very intuitive with what you need just when you need it. Sometimes metaphors come out of my mouth and I've got no idea where it came from, but it's perfect for the person who's right there. Or we move into a specific kind of inquiry and it's just what was needed. So it's very intuitive, it's very much a flowing movement based on where we are that day, where you are, where I am, what's going on, what's coming up. So as much as I mentioned my 4 inquiries, they're kind of held in the background. Like I don't sit there going, okay, now we're going to do some inquiring up. You know, they're kind of in the back of my mind. What comes through is what comes through, and that's absolutely what's needed for that moment. So that's our private one-to-one Zoom enlightenment sessions. And what you can do is you can combine transmissions into that. So you can either have a full hour of conversation, or you can have, usually we spend about 45 minutes in conversation, and then have the last 15 minutes of the session as a transmission. So that's a really nice way. If you're kind of like, I've still got some stuff I want to talk through, I've still got some stuff I want to understand through the logical mind and through language, but I don't really also like the transmissions to support the process, then that combination is a really great way to bring both of those things in together. And just so you know, with those private sessions, if you're a member in the sorry, I just got distracted by a tweet notification. If you're a member in the Wild Food community, and if you book 6 of those private sessions as a block, then you get 20% off, and you also get a month free in the community. So there's a really lovely package there where you book a block of private sessions, you get a month of membership automatically, you get 20% off the sessions, and as I say, they can be either purely language based or you can build transmissions into them. And that, it gives you a lovely complete support package, because that also provides you with group calls within the community. It provides you with all the discussion and the resources that are in there. There are loads of trainings in there. So loads and loads of good stuff through that option. So that's all of them for today. I feel like I had a lot more to talk about yesterday in terms of all the awakening offers, because there's those extra bits with the book. So for today, the newsletter, the community, transmissions, private sessions either on messages or face-to-face. One more. Yes, I was going to show you this last one. So in September this year, 23, myself and a colleague are going to be hosting an enlightenment program called Conscious Parenting. So it's going to be for people who are already in this kind of exploration and who see that parenting is potentially their biggest portal to their exploration. Our kids are incredible teachers to show us what's going on with our whirlpool experiences. So myself and my colleague are creating a program. We're going to be launching it in July, early July. What are we in now? April. Yeah, so early July we're launching it. We'll be doing a free masterclass leading up to that, or in that early July launch, so you can find out more about it. You can get a real experience of it, because we're going to be combining conversation-based sessions with me and then constellation sessions that my colleague Pip will lead. So it's going to be a really incredible program. Relatively small groups, sort of 15 to 20 people, all with kids of different ages, because we really want that the power of those different perspectives together will be really magical. And then we're going to be working through a different theme every month, with each month combining. Each month we'll get 2 calls, one a conversation based call and one a constellation call, If you've not come across constellations, that's a whole conversation for another day, but they are an incredible enlightenment tool. And so we're so excited about that program. It's going to be amazing. So if you're interested in that right now, as I say, we won't be starting till September, but we will have this free masterclass running in early July. So the first thing I mentioned today was get on my newsletter. If you want to know about the Conscious Parenting program and you don't want to rely on social media because we miss stuff, then go jump on my newsletter, because that's where you'll get to hear about it. That's where you'll definitely get to sign up to the free program, to see what you think, to see if it's something you want to join fully. And that's where you'll get to hear first in terms of being able to join as a fully paid member when we launch the program for September. So so we're both really excited about that. We see that, I mean, goodness, for those of us who are parents, it's one of the greatest challenges and greatest delights of our lives. And as I say, our kids are our greatest teachers. So it's going to be an incredibly potent program, that one. So if you're interested, do get on the newsletter so that you can be the first to hear about that. But I'll put all of this information in the description as well, so that once this video is up on Instagram and up on YouTube, you can go back and check it all out again. You can go back and do the inquiry again, listen to the whole thing again, whatever feels good for you. Huge thank you to you all for being here today. I would love to hear what the inquiry was like for you, how it felt, what you noticed about it. Yeah, kids are the gift that keep on giving, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I'd love to hear what your experience has been like today. I'd love to hear your questions. I've mentioned on Saturday it's a Q&A call, so send any questions over, whether they're about your life, your experience, whether it's about things that I've said. All of it is very welcome. And I'll be responding to all of that on Saturday. For now, just to let you know that tomorrow is you get to meet some of the people who are already in the Wild Fig world. So you get to hear about the kind of people who like hanging out in this stuff and who like exploring with me, so that you can, as we've been doing all week, you can use them as like this mirror to see, well, do I resonate? Do they seem my kind of people? Do I feel like my experience is similar to theirs? And do I like the sound of what they're benefiting from in being in my world? So that you can, as always, the world's a beautiful mirror for us. So use that opportunity tomorrow to do that and see what feels good to you. But yes, thank you so much, everybody. It's been lovely to see so many of you here today on the live. Thank you very much for joining, and I wish you a beautiful sunny afternoon. Lots of love.